Okay. Which talks about, hopefully this will be okay here. Uh, which talks about the home prices in Tacoma. I was going to say Seattle because the prices are almost identical to where they were back in the day in Seattle. But one of the big things is someone was made a comment on the video that if one of the, I'm sorry, I'm looking outside. It's just raining, and I'm just looking at the water. Anyway, they were saying that if one of the tech companies moves out, hopefully that would help us, and it maybe will make the price go down. I don't think that's the case. Recently, Seattle has a duplicate because Bellevue, which is just right across the lake, is really Seattle number two. Hey, Chili Beans. Bellevue is basically a mini Seattle in many respects. The companies you see in Seattle, you see a lot of them set up shop in Bellevue. So the chances of someone moving out of Seattle is pretty low. I mean, if Amazon were to pick up and leave, which is highly unlikely, but let's say that they did, Bellevue would likely be the candidate because Bellevue is very open to Amazon. Amazon has did a lot of expansions there. When New York was basically not the option for Amazon's expansion after all everything blew up, Bellevue became the focus for Amazon. So it's kind of like they decided to put their second headquarters there. The goal for them, they mentioned, was 25,000 jobs. Well, if you add up the jobs that are in Seattle now with just Amazon and you add up the 25,000 that they're going to have for Bellevue, that's 75,000 jobs. Okay. That's just Amazon. That's not counting Google, which has recently started to expand there, and in Kirkland. You're seeing Kirkland even experience a tech boom because companies are moving there pretty quickly as well. It just in the news the other day, Google is expanding in Kirkland. So it's not just Seattle anymore that's the big draw. I mean, I think that the tech talent is there, the venture capitalist money is there. There's a lot of startups also that are adding to this. So we're seeing a huge problem. We're seeing a huge problem with housing affordability because it's not just Seattle any longer. It's all these other cities that kind of ring around Seattle. So some people were saying, and I even thought this too, that basically Seattle's anti-business market would be, and I shouldn't say it's anti-business, but some of the things they do, businesses kind of frown upon. That maybe that would actually slow things down, and there may be some issues. Then when Amazon said they're looking for a second headquarters, that also was a bit of a concern. I never thought that they would leave Seattle. They've invested so much money in Seattle that it would be kind of a big waste. It would be a huge loss for them to do that. And so now it seems like that has changed. Now, there were reports that Alibaba, which is kind of China's version of Amazon, is looking to come to Seattle to actually compete head to head with Seattle in terms of everything, right? They wanted to compete with them, obviously, on business model, but as well as trying to pull their tech talent. A lot of companies are trying to pull each other's talent. I mean, really, Amazon has kind of did that with Microsoft, and Expedia has done that with some of the other companies, and Apple is here, and all these different companies, Facebook, they're all pulling talent and offering different incentives for people to come in. I gotta go to the front now since they're gone. But basically, I'm in the studio, so we can sit here and talk. But basically, the prices are not going to go down anytime soon as far as home prices. Now, Tacoma is well positioned because it is a city that's not reliant on any one industry. And so that kind of hurts us in terms of fast growth, but it's also helpful to us because we don't have the huge spikes when it comes to home prices, right? Um, but so it was surprising to me the other day because I hadn't looked for probably, I don't know, 4 months in detail as far as like home prices and all of that. Um, but when I saw something the other day, brewery blocks, which I went there and did a video, and I may have to pause if people come in, but brewery blocks, they had, and I sent this to my sister, they had a one bedroom, one bath, I believe, and it was like $1,800. And so, even though it's a big lofty, I mean, the ceilings are pretty tall. They're not as tall as these, obviously, but even that was a bit of a surprise. I saw that there was going to be another company bringing in apartments here that were that high, one bedrooms as well. And so it was a bit of a concern. Then when Noel was looking and said, hey, the those two houses that were built on one lot, keep in mind, this is a lot about the size of our lot, maybe a little bit smaller. And there was a home there. That home was in bad shape, so they pretty much just knocked it down. And on the same lot, they built two-story houses right there. So you're not going to have much of a front yard, not much of a backyard. Most of the front yard actually is driveway. And those two homes are selling for 400,000, and they're both pending. In fact, I think one of them somebody's moving into. So I don't know if they paid cash or what, but they're already moving in. We drove past it this morning. The third house is on a much bigger lot, and it's not a new build. Okay. And I just, Travi X, his name is Travis, he had mentioned something under that video. And I said that we had a house that was built about a year and a half ago. Well, maybe it was a little bit longer than that, but it sold a year and a half ago and it's for 325. It's a two-story house. It's got a much bigger lot that it's sitting on. And it is, as far as square footage, just a little bit bigger than the two homes that were selling at 400,000. So a year and a half ago, a house that was bigger lot, private driveway, and everything, it sold for 325. Okay. Now you have two houses that are literally, if I stood between them, I could touch them. That's how close they are. Barely a backyard. They two car. I think it's two-car garage. I'm not for sure if it's two-car or one-car garage, but those houses are 400,000, and they're literally right next to each other. So I think that pretty much the problem is going to continue. Just if it's like that now in this type of weather where it's literally raining every day, it's cloudy, it's not again the peak season, then yeah, I would say it's going to continue. And again, I don't think it's just due to Amazon or the tech world. I think it's due to a lot of different things. Now, with that said, we had a lot of companies that moved here recently to Tacoma, and there's others coming in too. And that is also fueling the prices down here. We have had, just as far as co-working spaces, we've had some of those come online, and we still haven't completed the old city hall. Once that's completed, that's going to add a whole new large volume amount of companies and jobs and things like that. So down here, we're feeling some of the Amazon effect and some of the Microsoft effect and things like that, but not to the same degree that some of the cities to the north are. I think you're seeing a low supply. We used to have a large amount of supply down here. It used to be that Tacoma had a lot of renters because you could not get people to buy homes. People couldn't afford it. A lot of the homes were in bad shape. Now that's the opposite. That supply is starting to dwindle. It's still probably greater than in Seattle. I don't know, to be honest with you. I haven't checked. But I did notice that the supply is much, much less than it has been before. So that's fueling the price. I wouldn't imagine it gets any better in the summer. Sure, I think that in the summer more people will probably sell homes because it just makes sense. But I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. I don't think that extra supply is going to lower the price of homes. Typically, homes don't lower unless you have what you had in Seattle, which was a correction. In Seattle, prices were just shooting up so fast that it didn't make any sense.
And so you saw a correction there, and so prices dropped. Here, it's just been a slow, steady increase, and then it was like a giant, sharp bump. So I don't think that that's going to change, to be honest with you. I don't know where that number is going to go. I don't know if we're going to be in the 350s on average much longer. But the last report that I saw was saying that we were in the 350s. But given the fact that I've only seen houses recently that's in the 400K range, is a bit concerning. Even our own home, the value has increased. I just told Noel this, that had we waited, because Noel was going to wait, and I said, no, we have to move now because otherwise we're going to be pretty much not necessarily priced out, because in Seattle right now we're priced out. And we do fairly well, but we're priced out of Seattle. At the time, we were not, but we would have been in a situation where we would have got a house that needed a lot of work and it wasn't really worth it. Now, I can say the same thing about Tacoma. If we didn't have a house and we were looking at Tacoma, we would be in the same situation that we were in Seattle some 3.5, 4 years ago. So it now Tacoma's catching up to where Seattle is. Now we're still far off as far as average price, but we couldn't afford what we have now if we were looking. And in fact, several months later, because our house jumped in value about 100,000 in just 1 year. Several months later, our house was to the point of where we could not have done it, to be honest with you. So just in, I would say 6, 7 months later, it wouldn't have worked. So we got in at the right time, and she told me, she's like, "Thank you for saying, hey, we need to do this now." Because typically I don't, I let Noel just kind of decide what we want to do or what we're going to do. But I told her, I said, everything shows that this is going to be expensive. Things are going up pretty quickly. And I would imagine that to continue as more development happens, especially the BRT line, which is close to where we are. The value of everything's going to go up as well. So, anyhow, I just wanted to do a video kind of talking about and explaining that portion where there basically, let's say there's 4 houses that are somewhat new. One has been a complete remodel. I mean, they gutted the inside of it, inside and out. They remodeled the outside. It looks spectacular. Like if you looked at it, it would look like it's brand new. It's got mature trees in the yard, everything else. That one at 400,000, I can see. I think it's at 395.5, which is 400,000. The other two are brand new. I mean, they didn't exist before, and they're sitting at 400,000, but they're on a shared lot, which they have their own utilities and everything. And then the other house, which is probably about a year and a half old, if that, was selling at what was it, 325. So just seeing that steady jump like that is crazy. And actually, there was a house that was next door to us that was needing, it was a foreclosure, and it needed some work. They put on a new roof, they did some remodeling on the inside, they did a lot of different things. And that house was, because the bank was, since it was foreclosed, they're selling it for what they needed, for what was owed. That house sold for 240. It sold for 240. But because there was a bidding war, I think it sold for, I forget now, but almost close to $10,000 more. And that was the lowest one. And that house, literally, you couldn't even. There were certain times of the day when we were trying to go home, and you couldn't even pull into our own driveway because there were so many people that were just parked out there, parked down the street, walking up the house. It was really intense. So because homes like that, especially that size of lot, just you're not going to find that. So I knew that house would go quick. But yeah, generally the 240s, it's an anomaly. You do find foreclosures that are out there. So people that are looking, I would definitely get a real estate agent, get a realtor, tell them that you're looking for homes that are possibly even in foreclosure. You might get a good deal. You might get a steal. But as far as finding a house that's just somebody's selling and it's going to be in the 200 range, it's next to impossible. And I don't see anything out there for under 200,000. And really, you won't find much for in the 250 range any longer. So anyhow, Hope you guys are having a great Friday. It's raining here bad. I don't know if you can see, but it's just horrible out. Anyhow,